Hello and welcome to Make Employee Training More Than a Checkbox. Unleash the 3 C's of training beyond compliance. In this session, you'll learn how to create onboarding training that sparks engagement and excitement, integrate personal and professional development into the learning culture, develop self-assured, satisfied employees who see the value of training, increase learner skill sets for for greater efficiency and overall job performance, and inspire long-term loyalty in employees who act as brand ambassadors. With us today is Mike Martin, Head of Training and Customer Experience at SAP Litmos. Mike has over the past 20 years has lived many exciting professional lives, from facilitating team building programs and ropes courses in the woods to authoring distance-based instructional resources online. He has been a full-time instructional designer, LMS manager, e-learning developer, corporate trainer and consultant, professional speaker, outdoor educator, and built and run training departments for billion-dollar companies. Mike is an innovative and energetic leader dedicated to helping people excel and prides himself on his ability to motivate and inspire those around him. Currently, Mike designs, develops, and manages the Litmos Dojo, an online customer learning center for SAP Litmos training users. He also creates and delivers internal training for members of the SAP Litmos team. So let's please welcome Mike to the session. Mike, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You are welcome to start sharing yours, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me for this webinar today. I know you probably have a lot to do. Actually, I'm joining right now from my garage office here, where I've been holed up for the last couple of months. It's an interesting time, but I'm wishing you all health and happiness out there. Thanks for joining. I also wanted you to see a face, right? We're all real people going through all of this stuff together, and I wanted to make sure that we had the video cracking today so that we had a really good experience with this. So, you know, I'm just excited to be here to talk about this this specific topic, about really unleashing the 3 C's, we're calling it, of what you should be thinking about beyond just compliance, because we know as trainers that a lot of times the biggest and the most important focus is on just the CYA stuff, like the cover your butt or recover, just the stuff like the compliance type training, the sexual harassment, the information security, those types of things. But we have to be thinking beyond that. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about all of those things as we go along. So I'm going to get my screen shared here, and you'll have, it'll be just a second. There we go. Should be able to see my screen now. If you don't, throw it in the chat and we'll get that going for you. Fantastic. All right. I had a great introduction. Thank you so much, Melissa, for that. I've done a lot. One of the biggest things that was missing out of that is I was actually a customer of Litmos, the SAP Litmos product, for about 6 years. So I've been in where, probably been where a lot of you are now, right? Running a department, using different products to try to get that training across to the people, no matter where they are in the world. Especially in today's environment, it's crucial that we're able to get what we need to get from our brands and from our companies into the minds of the people that work for us. And now, since you don't have those water cooler moments where you're just walking with somebody and it's like, hey, you got a minute? I miss that a lot, being in an office. You have to be really, really disciplined and very concerned about how that information comes across and what you do to get that across. So for me, I've always really been interested in exciting, fun ways to train people. Online education is my background and passion, and that's what I was doing before I put on the colors, the SAP Litmos colors, and joined the team back in 2016. But before that, again, I was a customer of the Litmos product for about 6 years. So really excited to talk through some of the things that I do to keep my teams going. Because right now I run the entire post-sales team, the account managers, the onboarding specialists. So not only am I offering some advice today, it's really just, it's mostly about the stuff I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, what I'm learning from other people and integrating into my work day as well. Because I'm just like you. I'm not trying to sit here as a speaker and I don't do the work. I do it every single day. I'm taking a different approach and speaking from my experience. Want to make sure that that comes across. So today, talking about the state of training, we'll start there. A little bit about the checkbox mindset, which again, a lot of this stuff is going to be self-explanatory. It's going to be what I call a lead does ship moments, right? Like instead of leadership, it's lead does ship. It's stuff that you go, yeah, duh, you got to do that. And what's interesting that I found is that a lot of people, though, that I talk to, they know what to do, they just don't do it. So hopefully today, I'm going to encourage you and I'm going to challenge you out there to actually take some steps with some of the things that you learned today. And one of the biggest things I want to get across too is that we only have 60 minutes and really only about 50, because I want to make sure that I spend some time on the questions and I'm able to answer your questions at the end and create that relationship with you. But that's not a lot of time. So I'm not going to solve all the world's problems or all of your problems in this. But what I want to do, I mean, really the biggest goal for me is to inspire you to really look at how you do things, inspire you with the content that we're going to put through, and then inspire you to take action. Because no matter what we do here today, like as much as it's great and we take notes and we write stuff down, unless we actually put that foot in front of us and go and try something out, it will really be for naught at that point, right? So we want to make sure that we're trying stuff. So once again, back to the agenda, 3 C's of training and beyond compliance. We'll talk about tips to unleashing them. I have a few things that I do on a daily basis that I want to make sure that I pass along. And then of course the Q&A there. So we're going to start out with you, right? I've had a chance to introduce myself. I've had a chance to talk about what the goals are, to inspire you to action, to inspire you to look and think differently about your training program and to see what you can do, even if it's just the littlest thing, right? Now I have a question for you to kick this off. So we have a little audience poll that's going to pop up here in just a minute. And what I'd like is for you to, just as honestly as possible, to be able is just to go through and answer the poll that pops up. So the question is, where does your organization spend the majority of their training budget? So when you think about it, right, that it all comes down to money, right? Money is the thing. It's the lifeblood of the company. Where do you find that most of it, the attention, the time, the money, the effort is spent? And you can watch this live poll unfold. I love it. It's like a horse race. You're watching horses jump in the lead and go on. Like, wow, okay, this is good. Thank you so much for responding, by the way. This works if you work it. And look at that. We're getting a whole lot of folks going. So we'll wait just another 30 seconds or so everybody can get in there. Interesting. Okay. We're going to end the poll in 5 seconds. It'll count down 4, 3, 2, 1, and the poll is done. Let's look at the results here as we go along. And it looks like professional development is in the lead with 14% of the 14 people, my bad, 25% of the respondents, which is great. This group, it's like I'm preaching to the choir today, right? It sounds like the people who are already doing a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about are in the room today, right? The ones who need to know it maybe didn't attend, right? Compliance at 21%. Okay, so a lot of the budget spent there. Really great to see the product and the sales training at 21% with 12 of you. No other, that's fine. Service and support training down at the bottom of the barrel. Is this surprising, I wonder, right? I mean, this is more of a rhetorical question for you, or you can definitely put it in the chat. The question and answer we'll use for if you want to ask me a question directly. For the chat one, though, if you want to have a side conversation, please feel free. I want this to be interactive. This isn't super, I hope you know that I'm not wearing like a colored shirt, and it's not super serious in that sense or formal. I just want to have a conversation with you today. That's when I'm best, and I hope that works for you as well. So if in the chat area you want to put in there, I mean, is that surprising to you? Is that to see your colleagues put that in there? That'd be an interesting topic to noodle on if you want to put some stuff in there. Okay, so moving on from that. Interesting that the professional development is the top one, because that's going to be a big piece of the workshop today, talking about the importance of that and then ways that you can make it important to other people. Because what I've found, to be honest, right, is that for me, I can have something be incredibly important to me and exciting and be the top of everything in my world, and it just isn't even on someone else's radar. So hopefully we can talk through a little bit of how we can make sure that you can make it important to other people too. State of the training world today. A couple of things to know, right? One of my the biggest things we just saw is where we spend our money, right? Companies, what we found now is that companies spend a lot of the majority of their training budgets on compliance requirements, and you saw that it was towards the top. For this particular subset of our population, it was not the top one, which was great. But in the industry, what you'll notice is that companies do spend the majority of their time, their effort, their attention, and their money on compliance types things, which is, I mean, it makes sense why, right? So when you look at it, most of their funding goes to these things to the tune of $3.2 million annually, says Training Magazine. That's a lot of money when you're talking about getting people trained. And the focus too, I don't want to lose sight of that, right? When we give money for something, when we trade a value, money is just a representative of value, right? That's what it is at the baseline. It has a value, and we give it, and somebody gives us something back of equal value. That's how our system works, right? And when we have this value, it's like whatever people are putting the money into is what they see as important. And now think about this, because that's going to be important as we go through here, like making training and making what you want important to other people, so they will allow you to do the things that you want to do with that. So where do we spend our money? As you saw in this subset, it looks like professional development, it looks like sales or product training and those sorts of things, and also on the compliance side. But the research shows that a lot of it is also on that. Companies are spending the majority of that on the compliance type things. Now, what are we missing, right? I mean, there's a whole world of training out there. It's all those things that were on that poll, right? When we're talking about the customer experience and trying to help them be better as employees, as people, as I don't know, I would say people that are pushing our brand, right? And supporting the company. So there's a whole world out there where the experience reigns, better customer service and support and performing salespeople. And all of these things are beyond that compliance C, right? Of trying to make people be able to do their jobs better, the ones that they were hired for. So we're missing a bunch of stuff. Well, some of you aren't, though. A lot of you looks like that you're spending a lot of money and time and effort and attention, again, making it important that you're doing that now. So good on you and kudos to you. Keep up the good work. And for the others, let's talk about some of the things that we can get there. Or how we can get to that point, right? So we first need to get ourselves free of the checkbox mindset, right? So my message is there's just so much more to training than a checkbox, right? This boring mandated requirement that, and even that, right? People are they have a mentality when they think of compliance. Think of that word itself. The words we use are powerful. When I say compliance, for instance, it probably evokes an emotion inside of you that's like, I don't want to do that. Maybe it's something that you want to run away from. So first thing is just changing the language and trying to get out of the belief that everything has to be a checkbox, right? I know it's essential, and those things that need to be done, but we also need to be thinking beyond that as well. Now, here's my challenge, my first leadership challenge for you. And again, I can't make you do anything. All I can do is I can throw it out to you in a challenging way, and hopefully you can take on that and see where you go. My challenge to you is to shift that mindset away from compliance and completion and check boxes into something else, that something more broad, right? Or something broader that takes in the whole of the employee, right? And those aren't the 3 C's, yeah, as you can see here, right? Those aren't the 3 C's we're talking about. They are 3 C's, but not the ones that we're talking about today. We're trying to get away from those, just thinking about training as compliance, completion, and check boxes. And sometimes it's just a matter of switching our belief about something, right? Because when we believe something, then we start to look for things in our environment to support that belief. And if I believe compliance is crappy and it's not fun and I don't want to do it, then I'm going to find every way in my environment, in my world, in my thought processes to avoid that stuff. So we need to change that. How can we do that? So let's just look at that for just a minute, right? I mean, but before we get to that, actually, you know what? I'm going to back up because I do want to make one point is to the why, right? Sometimes we don't get into the why people are into this checkbox mindset. And the why is pretty simple, right? The firms, they rely on completion rates because and check boxes and those measures because it's been shown to be the right way, because it's the objective to demonstrate to regulators and to bosses and CEOs and all of those that you've done something. And I've been guilty of it too. I'll put my hand up that sometimes in my early career, sending out training, I mean, my only objective was that they did it and they had a checkbox in there. But that's not just you. And I want you to understand that according to the Harvard Business Review, again, what I just said about the reason that people do this is that there's just this push to satisfy the requirements for our regulators, for our bosses and such. I'm not trying to say that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that if that becomes the only focus, we lose a lot of what we can be doing as trainers, right? So let's look at how to shift the mindset here. And here's my first piece of advice to you is that we got to shift it from a have to a want to. Is changing that belief pattern in our customers, or when I say customers, I mean all the people that work for us and in our employees and the people who are using our service, right? And coming in to find value in the things that we're doing. Is to move it from a have to where they show up like, oh, I've got to do this, to a want to. And there's a lot of things that you can do in there. And let's just look at a few different examples of those mandatory type situations. One of them being onboarding training. Let's start there. I think that there's no better place in the world where you can jump in and make the biggest difference to an employee than onboarding right here, is to have that experience be top notch. I remember when I was doing onboarding for a company called Build.com, and we sold toilets on the internet. It's a funny way of saying we were a home improvement, right? So we sold toilets, sinks, faucets, and we were a pure play store on the internet. So we didn't have a brick and mortar. It was just all internet sales. But what was interesting is we had about 250 salespeople, and we would always be getting people churning through. So we'd always have new people coming in, and we were always growing. So we had onboardings almost every month. And to make these, I mean, really to focus in on their efforts of when they came in, to make their experience so great and so fun that they were super committed to the company. So onboarding is one of those places where you can get people really focused in on the company, right? And get them excited. Some things that we did is we would, we were lucky because we all were under the same roof. So we were able to have people come into the same room and have an onboarding spectacular. But think of creative ways that you can bring people on board and try to avoid things that, like I heard just the other day, a friend of mine was telling me that he had taken a job a while back and they literally sat him down in front of I think it was a VHS player. I really do. They sat him down in front of or a DVD or something, and they just hit play and they said, when you're done with this, come find us. Right. So think about that for a minute. Think about the experience that they have when they're first coming on board. And if you want to change it to where they really want to do this stuff and they want to show up with everything they have, we need to be thinking of ways to make it interesting for them, right? That's the most important thing here. So let's look at compliance training, right? One of the biggest ways that we have for Litmos now, right? So working here with the employees that we have is to gamify our compliance training. We make it fun. We have leaderboards. We have different prizes for people who get it done. So there's a motivation aspect in there where they're getting it done and they're finding the value. And I'm going to give you my top secret, but I'm going to wait till the end of what will make any of this stuff really stick. So wait for that. But it kind of just shows up here too. So I'll refer back to this time when I give you my ultimate secret. But so we'll come back to that one. Now, skills development and certificates is another great way that you can give people that focus of making it fun and compliance. Now, not only does it make it fun and interesting, but it also makes it that they're growing as individuals, which is one of the things that we want to focus on most, right? Is that our jobs as trainers is not just to make sure they're doing their job, but they're growing as human beings, that they're growing as individuals who can contribute more value to the organization. And if we're really being honest, in my opinion, I think is that they can add value wherever they end up, wherever they are, right? Obviously for our company, obviously for that, we want them to continue to stay. I tell my people this all of the time, but I also want them to understand that I want them to grow as individuals and contribute more value. So when you're thinking about your compliance training, think through, are you making it fun and engaging? Are you making it so that they want to be there? Or is it just like think about the messaging in there too. I had a boss one time that was like, look, Mike, I know that I put 6 different courses on your to-do list. They all suck. I don't want to do them even. In fact, my wife actually does them for me at home. No joke. I'm not even kidding. I'm not making this up. He's like, my wife does them for me at home and I log in and she does them. It's like, I just don't want to do them. And, but you have to. So Mike, go ahead and get them done. Just suck it up and get it done. Now consider that for just a minute. Like if that's the message I get, how much importance am I putting on that? Am I thinking of it as a want to, like I understand the reasoning behind why it was assigned to me, the reasoning behind why it was important? No, absolutely not. That's absolutely, I'm a prisoner in that. Yeah, I'm in the have to mentality, and it's set up from my boss. So the reason I bring that up is that all of us have a responsibility to the people that we want to take this, and we want them and the responsibility to the people who we want to change their minds about things. And that's you out there, I would imagine, right? You with the in the leadership roles to say, really pushing it as like, here's why we want to do that. Here's the importance of it. Here's the issue behind it, right? We want to make sure, and putting that importance on it and not making it sound like such a chore. So I just want to throw that out there because people respond to that when you give them the whys behind that. And also they respond to, adult learners, as we all know, they respond to milestones, respond to growth. And that's why this last one, skills development, certifications and such, stuff that they can put on LinkedIn, stuff that they can be proud of, that they have completed, and it makes them excited to be a part of what they're doing. About 4 years ago, we held a big conference where we went through, we had a course where we called it the Ninja Belt course, right? Where we had a white, a green, and a black belt course of people just learning the Litmus product. And we had so many people show up that we had to close the doors. The fire marshal shut us down. They're like, look, you can't have any more people show up. It was at one of our big conferences. And what was interesting was we made that really fun and exciting. And then we had a certificate at the end. We didn't print up enough, but guess what? After that was over, we had calls for weeks. People like, I want my certificate. I want it so bad. Where's my certificate, right? They want to be able to show off and they want to be able to show their bosses. They want to show the thing that they did, right? So don't overthink this where it's like, oh, it's a badge, it's a button, nobody wants that. They do. I just want to throw that out there. You can also make these things fun just by adding in just a little bit of that. You get something for this when you get to the end of it. So that's a little bit of but the bigger picture here again is how to shift that mindset. We need to be thinking about how we frame things for people. We need to be thinking about how we change that mindset from they have to do it to they want to do it, just by explaining it, the understanding of some of the compliance stuff, right? So if we have to do it, compliance is a part of life, but we can do it with a little bit more flash and flare to make it a little more exciting for people. And again, onboarding, I think, is your biggest place. If you want to really connect your people to your business, that's the place where you've got to really step it up and make that an interesting environment, right? Now, this is my biggest one. This is, as you can probably see, I'm a relationship guy, right? There are some people that are facts and figures, and that's great. I appreciate everybody and what they bring to the table. For me, I'm really about relationships and the ideas of soft skills training, right? The idea of it's not just what you do, or it's how you're being while you're doing what you're doing, which is one of my absolute favorite quotes that I got from one of my favorite mentor speakers. It's like, Mike. It's like, look at this. It's like, it's not just what you do. It's how you're being while you're doing what you're doing. So think about that. We can get things done a lot of different ways. I can make sales. My account managers can get sales in a lot of different ways. But how are they being while they're doing that, right? Like how are they acting towards the customer? Are they doing it in an exciting way where they're inspiring the customer to stick with us and to buy more of our products or get involved more, right? So it's how you're being while you're doing what you're doing, which speaks directly to this soft skills training. And I love this LinkedIn quote here. In today's world of software engineering and ever more technology, it's soft skills that employers want. 91% of companies cited this as an issue. 80% of companies are struggling to find better soft skills on the market, right? Makes sense to me because as a person who's been in the business myself for a very long time, I got to tell you that I can teach people almost anything when it comes to the doing part. I can teach you how to do. I can't teach you how to be. Right. So I can influence you and I can give you things, but that comes from you, right? I can teach you how to fill out this report and I can teach you how to do this customer interaction better, but I can't teach you how to be. I mean, that's the piece. The soft skills training is more about unlocking it for them, right? Is they're able to look at it and they're able to go, oh yeah, I can see how that would benefit me. And then they will take that on. So I'm a big proponent of the soft skill training. It's another great way that you can offer your employees and make them more marketable. Right, make their skills and they can develop and be promoted and those types of things by having what employers want, which is a real good grasp of common sense and understanding customer success and service and understanding human interactions and how to have those, right? How to do this better, right? Turning cameras on. Something simple like what I did here is connecting me, hopefully, more to you than if it was just my voice. It's just little things like this, and this is all that training there. So to speak on that a little bit further, right? Integrating personal and professional development and soft skills into the learning culture, you have to integrate it in because the biggest thing here is this quote. Love this one. Anything you want people to take seriously has to become a part of what you're doing, not apart from. So think about this for a minute, right? What do I mean by that? It has to become a part of what you do. Right? It's a part of that every day. It's expected. It's one of the things you talk about, you make important, not apart from, not something you go, hey, next week we want you to do this and we put it on your schedule. Okay, great. And then you move on and never talk about it again. That's apart from, that's separate. That's something that's just an add-on piece that just gets locked in. It needs to be a part of what you do. So integrating these in, if you're not doing it already, but it looks like a high percentage of the respondents on the first poll are, integrating that into there where you're really focused in on not just the doing part, but the being, right? We focus so much on the doing, like here's how you do this and how you do that, and the covering our butts with the compliance training. But how are they being around the customers is such an important part too, around each other, around the entire, the culture, the team, all of those things are incredibly important. So adding those in. So what I would do here is I would say, take a quick look, right, at your environment and see how much of the being parts are being talked about, right? How much importance is put on that? Or is it just do these trainings, learn these products, and move on, right? If that's what's happening, then maybe it's time to take a step back and see what's missing and how you can add that back in. Now, LinkedIn research had the five most in-demand soft skills, right? Drum roll, please. What do you think they are? I'm going to go ahead and just give them to you because we're running out of time here. But what I think is important is that the five most in-demand soft skills, according to LinkedIn, are creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, and time management, right? So these are things that what I've seen in my career anyway, become the apart from type trainings, right? They're the ones that we'll get to if we have time. And guess what? We never have time because all of our time is based on the other stuff that we need to get done. So I guess my biggest push here on this slide is just really for you to I'm challenging you to take a look at your environment and start to see how much is, and just weigh it out, right? How much stuff is being put in the professional development side, right? How much time and intention and importance is being put on getting people to be more creative and more persuasive, to have better conversations and public speaking, being able to collaborate better, adapt and have resilience, which is a word I'm learning a lot of now with my kids being here all the time. For the last 2 months, I'm a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, and just learning resilience and bouncing back from things, right? How are you doing that? Time management, understanding how they're doing that stuff. Like how is that happening in your environment? Again, I don't have the answers for you because it's all very different depending on what environment you're coming from, but I'm trying to light the match, right? Of you saying, okay, let me look at that. Is it more heavily weighted towards one or the other? How can we get it to where it's more balanced out? Because again, we're looking for an entire, the big circle here, right? We're looking for a holistic approach at training because that's what's really going to make the biggest difference for you. Again, I can get people to do things all day long, but will they stick around year after year and do those? Not if I'm not doing it the right way. If I'm just like beating them down and I'm leading them in a way, they're going to quit, they're going to churn, whatever it might be. It's about tapping into those other potential pieces here that we're talking about that will give you the biggest boom. It's interesting there. So anyway, I really think those skills translate into better customer service, employee experience, all around. So as we think about this, if we want to move the needle and create those better environments, these are the things we should be thinking about. Is these types of things too, the soft skills, they do matter. What would happen if, right? So I want to change your belief as we're talking about this. This is a lot about psychology too, of just saying, Mike, I can never do that. I can't get people to take it important, to make any of this type of stuff important enough that we're going to put time and effort or carve time out of our day for this. And I want to change your mindset that if you ever have those types of thoughts, think this instead. Well, what would happen if I could, right? What would happen if we could do that? What would I need to do, right? Because then your brain starts thinking in possibilities and you're going to start getting better answers than we could never do it because, right? So I'm just going to put that out there as being one of the little psychological tricks that I use all of the time. I use it on my family, on myself, because whenever I have one of those thoughts, like I can't do that, I'm like, well, what would happen if I could? And it always leads me to a better place. So I just wanted to share that with you, side note, but I still think it's important. So let's jump into 3 C's. Here we go. We've got 40 minutes under our belts now. Whoo, that's fast. So we're going to go through this quick. Now, the thing you've been waiting for with a nice setup all the way to here is the 3 C's to me are just about how you can focus in and try to sell what you're selling to your leadership, right? The first one is this. The first C is confidence. Now, this is beyond the checkbox, right? Like, how are we unleashing the confidence in our employees, right? Unleashing the confidence in the people around us. To me, this is the most important one there, is that it's the spark, right? It really ignites and impacts all all things, including the things we talked about a second ago: resilience, the appetite for trying new things, modeling for other employees, their work quality. Think about a time that you have been, you just haven't been confident in a process or a product or something. Think about how likely you are to step into wanting to take that on, right? You're like, I don't feel confident. I don't want to do that. And then you will start to move away, because the way humans work on a real simplistic level is that we have moving away from things and we have moving towards things, right? With threat, that's our threat response. When we feel threatened, we move away from those. And when we're not confident in a process or a product or something like that, we absolutely are moving away from it. So think about that. When you're thinking with your customers, it's not just about, or your employees. When you're thinking about that there, how are you building and unleashing their confidence and making sure that they have what they need, and they feel like they can really connect to what you're talking about? It's so important there, because that drives almost every other thing. Their confidence in themselves, that they're becoming self-assured, as it says in there. And then you're going to start to see some real value, because if you have a confident employee, maybe they're going to try some new stuff and they're going to get you and innovate and get you new places, right? If you have an confident employee and they're working through things in that confident manner, you're going to have someone that's going to be more connected to the customers, because they're going to see it and they're going to feel it as well. It radiates out from this piece here. So we want to unlock that confidence, unlock their enthusiasm, and get them to care about things, right? That's going to be a real critical step. So training has to be about that. If you want to talk about beyond compliance, here's one of the first steps: is think about how your training is inspiring their confidence. How are you building employee confidence in yours? So that's the question for the first C. C number 2 is the competence, right? And that's their ability to do things well, and to know things, to be skilled at Microsoft Word or Excel or whatever process you have, or the product that you have, right? I mentioned earlier that I sold toilets on the internet with build.com. Well, we had over 1 million products that we sold, and the salespeople had to be responsible for any one of those. Anytime someone called in, they might ask about a lighting fixture, or they might ask about a handle set. Who knows, right? They have to be responsible for being able to either find that information with confidence and be able to speak to it with confidence, or to know it, which is that is the competence part. The other one's confidence, right? So how are you doing that there? How are you boosting their competence so they're feeling like they're growing, they're learning, and they're becoming more well-rounded, right? People's jobs, if you think about it, require a lot more than the thing that they were hired for, right? I might hire you to do a certain thing, but man, their job requires so much more for that. So how are you making sure that your workforce is prepared for what's to come, with the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, those things, to be able to do things the way that you need them? One last little story on here. You think about competence this way too, is that it's also a confidence booster when you're competent. Think about that. When you have, when you know something and you know it hands down, a certain process or whatever, you become more confident, which it becomes this cycle, and they play on each other, right? A more confident employee is out there with the world, and they're feeling it, and so these things are working with each other. Quick story. It was interesting. I used to work for the school district, and I would do after school programs, and I had an employee, or an after school program director that couldn't get these really rough kids, the ones that were always coming late and having a difficult time in school. They couldn't get them to do anything in the after school program. So what he did is he taught them how to play ping pong without a paddle, just their hands. And he brought them in 30 minutes early before school started to do this, and taught them the skill of just being able to flow. And it turned them around, because they felt like they earned something, right? That it was just like, oh, wow, I know something different now. And it changed their whole demeanor, and it changed everything about how they showed up. Right. And I think it's a great story, because I've always remembered it, because it's like, wow, if I can teach you to do something better, it's going to build your confidence, and that's going to start you flowing down the right path of being able to take care of the customers better, to have more empathy and understand where they're at. So competence is the second one. So confidence, competence, and the last C is commitment. We spoke on this earlier. Where I think you get the biggest commitment is right out of the gates in the onboarding. Focus your efforts in that very first, is to get them to put the tattoo on their arm for your company, right? And I mean, figuratively, right? Not real, but not literally. But the idea is, how can you get them committed to inspire that loyalty from them, right? From the very beginning. And if a committed employee is one that will give you what we call their discretionary energy. I don't know if you ever heard that term before, but I love this term, discretionary energy. There's a certain amount as a boss that you can make people give you, right? There is definitely that. But there is a little bit left over that nobody but themselves can choose to give you. And that's the discretionary part. And you can get that 120% out of somebody when they feel like they want to give it to you. And that's that commitment piece. And getting them committed is all about just showing them the why and the reasoning and making things important, right? So think about that. To get beyond the check boxes, to get someone who's committed, who's confident, who's competent in there. Those are the three things we should be striving for, because they're going to influence absolutely everything else in your business. And when it comes down to it, really the biggest part of business is what? Making money, right? I mean, money is the dollar bills at the end of the rainbow. That's really what it's about in most businesses when you think about it. And you can either make money or you can save money, right? I mean, those are the two ways that you can contribute. And but the way I think about it is that most of the teams that I lead, except for the AMs, don't have direct money making ability, right? But you know what? They influence that so much with creating amazing customer relationships, with understanding processes better than anyone else, to be able to offer advice when they need it for strategic moves in their company, to understand how to set up an LMS or whatever it might be. So all of that matters. That is the baseline for customer success, because without them, you don't have a business, right? And without the business, you don't have the value indicator, which is usually money for most people. Other people, I know nonprofits and such out there, it's a very different situation, but you still have to keep the lights on, and we still have to, at the end of the day, you still have to look at the budgets and all of those things. So how do we influence that? So what do you get from your efforts here of building commitment? Last little piece on this one is an intrinsic motivation and access to that discretionary energy, right? Where you have somebody who shows up because they want to, who does something because they want to, not necessarily because they're told to. There are a lot of jobs like that where I can tell you to go do something and you'll do it because I'm your boss. Or I can be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or like, hey, this is, I need you to get this done. And they're like on it. Or they do it before you even ask. That's where I feel like you really get to when you're thinking of training bigger than just, oh, I got to get out that compliance training this month and make sure they did this and make sure that they did this leadership seminar, right? It's got to go beyond that. There is a fourth C because we like bonuses, right? And that's that continuing to grow part, right? So the bonus C is just be thinking about how you are asking your employees to grow with you as a company, right? How are they growing? Are they unleashing their potential with their commitment and their confidence, right? Are they doing that? Are they getting what they need? So it's important to think through that too, help them grow as people. Notice that CYA was not one of the C's in here, right? Covering your A, right? So I want to make sure that that's clear. Although that stuff is important, we have to dig deeper. So I have 2 minutes to get through the last little bit before I open it up to questions, because I saw the little thing bouncing in the background, but since I'm doing the presentation, I couldn't answer the questions, but I'll get in there real quick in just a minute and see if I can answer any of them. And I want to put this out to you too, is that it doesn't end here. I'm sure you'll get my contact information. Feel free to send me an email if you want to talk about this more. If I've inspired you or you want to have any other conversations, I'm happy to jump on the line and chat with you about anything, because I'm kind of passionate about this, if it shows, I hope. So tips to unleash the 3 C's. First one, definitely have the right systems in place, because really it's down to making it easy for people. If you don't make it easy for folks to learn, it's going to be really tough for them. And, I'm a shameless plug for the product. I was a user of the product, and now I'm, of course, a part of it. And I'm only doing that because I really believe in the simplicity and the power behind it. So find yourself systems that are going to work for you, that are really easy, that are and that people are going to easily be able to jump into, right? So maybe on the LMS side, it's a solid system of delivery, leveraging off-the-shelf content, because I know you don't have all the time in the world. I don't have all the time in the world. If somebody else has done it better already and they're selling that, I mean, if you have that, you have the budget, make that happen, right? So it's really important that you start looking for ways to help leverage that and get that stuff out, right? And then follow up. This is the biggest thing here, right? I told you at the beginning that I'd give you the most important thing you can do to get past just a checkbox mentality, is that you've got to follow up with stuff and make things important. If you don't make it important, then they won't make it important, because they're going to model your behavior, right? That's just the way it's going to be. So make sure that you're following up and you're making it important, meaning that if you assign a professional development training around time management in your next team meeting or with your managers, if you're managing managers, ask them to at least mention it. Be like, hey, I see that everybody did take the time management thing. What was one thing that you learned from that? Even if you just spend 5 minutes on it, just touching base, your employees are going to be focused and realize that that's important. And they're going to start to take it more important, more seriously than they did before. So follow up. If you don't have those conversations, I mean, you can assign courses till you're blue in the face and hope to goodness that they have the intrinsic motivation to make it really matter. But you have to do a little work too. At least that's been my experience. Anytime that I've seen real progress is when we've followed up and we've had conversations about it. The other big thing you need to do is really understand your leadership, right? And talking in their language. So understanding that the executives a lot of times make the decisions, right? They really do. They make the call on whether good, bad, right, or wrong, indifferent, they make the call. So articulate the connection between training and performance, right? Showing that value to debunk the myth of training as a cost center, which I heard all the time and I hated it so much, right? So you have to align with metrics, whether it's customer satisfaction, those types of things. It's really important that you pick something and that's important to the business, right? And that you align with that. So there is a metric to showcase all of the fun stuff that you want to do. Because if I come to my boss and I say, I want to do all these things around performance and time management and all that stuff, and the first question they're going to say is why, and what needle will it move? And I have to have a response to that. So I'm challenging you to do the same, to have a response to it and say, hey, look, we want to track customer satisfaction because the more they're satisfied, the longer they stick around and the less they'll churn. And here's our churn rate. And I want to reduce that by 2 percentage points. I mean, whatever it might be, you have to be challenged to speak their language and go to it with metrics in mind. Finally, meeting with the line of business stakeholders, understanding what they're dealing with, and then making it about them. I think that's an incredibly important thing. It's just really understanding that you're going to try to solve problems that they're actually having rather than just the things that we think, right? I do that a lot. I prescribe things without doing the diagnosis. So spend some time doing the diagnosis and you're going to get a better result. So in the moment, like if you see that in the lines of business, the people are saying, hey, look, our folks are just not getting along and they're not collaborating. Okay, well, that's a perfect example of where you could come in with one of these trainings and be like, hey, we're going to do this to move this needle, to get them to collaborate better. And then we're going to see pre and post how well they're doing with that. That's going to give you more leverage to be able to get the time that you need to make that happen. Finally, attaching it to business goals, right? Start with that goal in mind. And how can training help with business related things? Communicating with learners about it. Like, again, we talked about that. How will the training contribute to the company's goals? Make sure they know and they understand what they're doing has value and relevance, because the worst thing you can do is to pile stuff on learners and not give them any relevance at all and not tell them why it's important, not to discuss it with them. It really does suck for them. I got to tell you, is they'll be like, well, I don't know why this matters to me. And until it matters to them, it won't, you're not going to see a huge shift in the mentality there. And then leverage the LMS to track, measure, and share progress if you have one, right? Somehow you need to be able to respond to that. And then again, leadership likes metrics and they like looking at things and things over times and pretty graphs. So you have to be trying to track that stuff down to be able to showcase what people are doing and what they're getting out of it, right? It's not just, hey, yeah, 100% of the people completed the course. It's like, and guess what we did? Here's a summary of what of the conversation that we had afterwards and the goals that we set based upon that, right? There's a next step, and I know it's hard, and I'm in my ivory tower, and I'm preaching from the pulpit here, but that next step is going to help you move things beyond just being a checkbox. It's just the way it is. Because at the end of the day, again, it's always about money, right? So, I mean, for most people anyway, not everybody. I know some of the line, it's not, but for most businesses, it's just like, hey, we need to be able to keep the lights on and keep things going. How does what you're doing relating to that goal? We always have to be pushing that for sure. Right? So finally, questions. I'm running out of time. I apologize. About 5 minutes for questions. Sorry, I went over a little bit. I see that there are a couple in the Q&A. How do we make the academic people see the value of soft skills? For research and professors, soft skills are the least priority. To me, it's about making it important. Right? So the idea behind the importance is this, is to say, hey, look, if we were able to make our, you just have to make the case, right? And lay it out in a logical way because they're using that part of their brain. And when I've made the cases before to people with logic, I'm coming in with facts and figures, right? I'm coming in with things written down. I'm being very specific. Notice in this call, I was I would say, I don't know, I would say open and excited about things. And I was in that mentality for you because I'm trying to inspire you. So I'm like, hey, look at this. And my voice is going up and I'm being enthusiastic and I'm being spirited. for people like that, you're going to want to change the way you approach it, right? Like, here's the facts and figures behind this. If we were able to move this needle, as per Harvard Business Review says, you know what I mean? Like, find studies that support your claim. If we make people more focused on their confidence and competence, and they understand the customer, or even be specific, if they understand the customer better and that customer experience is better, right, then that's going to lead to their retention rates being, they're going to stick around longer, which means our retention rates are going to go up. So you have to make the case from that standpoint of like, all right, very direct, very succinct, very matter of fact, instead of going in and being like, because I said so, it's going to be great and you're going to love it, right? Spirited approach will not work with the direct or the logical type of folks out there that are doing that. So, I mean, I think you try to make the case and have that conversation. And that's always worked pretty well for me, is going in with that mentality. Tips to bring experiential learning in online training sessions. Love that, because that's exactly the background that I had with experiential learning, is getting people to do things, right? For me, I think that you set it up. First of all, have people turn their cameras on. I'm not even kidding. If you're not doing it now, make it mandatory, right? Have people turn their cameras on so they can see each other. Because then people are less likely to be distracted. They see there's an emotion. And think about how much is lost when you're just hearing their voice or seeing text, right? You're not seeing the way my eyebrows raise. You're not seeing me smile, or, you know, my hand gestures. When you're missing 75% of what communication is about, right? Is the nonverbals and the body language and all those type, the paralanguage, right? So I would say do that first. And that's a big step towards making experiential, is watch people smile and nod their heads. And it gives you feedback too, when you're going, okay, got it, right? And whether people are getting it or not. I've done that with my team, and I started it actually before all of the COVID stuff. But yeah, now it's just natural. Everyone turns their cameras on and they're just prepared for that. And it's made such a huge difference, right? So that's a big way with the experiential one. And number two is, I would say, again, think of it as a blended approach. All of you awesome learners out there, right? Or instructional designers out there. Try to think of things as a blended approach. Have them go away and do something, and then have them come back, turn on Zoom, and talk about it for just a few minutes, right? Just to show that it's important and try to get some value out of that. It's like, hey, look, we did this one on collaboration, right? We did this course, you went and took it. What are the top 3 things that you noticed? Or I don't know, having those conversations is going to be really, really great. And I think you're going to see a big movement there, is in their engagement, because now they're taking it seriously. I still have one person in my, a build on my team that would show up for every meeting, but never contribute, and would show up on Zooms like here with a black screen, just their name in there, and never talk. And they're just, sitting on the side and not doing anything, or not stepping up. And that's not, I see that a lot of businesses that I talk to, that's everybody, right? I have one, and I'm working on that. Try to move past that to where everybody's engaged and interacting. Use polls, put the question out, and then just wait like this. And it's uncomfortable, but just wait for somebody to fill the space. You don't always have to fill the space. But we could talk more about that. Please hit me up offline, and I'd be happy to give you some more advice on that. Let's see how you engage your internal faculty to try new things and align their training to new training technologies instead of using the ones they have been using for the last 20 years. Wow. We have like 30 seconds before time is up. I don't have time to jump into that, but you're right. I mean, once people are entrenched and there's a habit around that, it is very difficult to get them to change. What I try to do always is I try to always get them to see the reasoning behind it, right? Like, here, let's walk through this together, right? If we do this, then this would happen, right? Yep. And then if that happens, this might happen. Yep. And we start walking through it and be like, would you be open to just trying it out? Another real good strategy that I use with people who are entrenched like that is, I'm like, look, I just go to them and I make them the center of the world. I'm like, look, I admire you so much and what you're doing with your team and how, your experience and such. We want to try something else, and, just a new little piece here. And I would love to get your input on this. Would you be willing just to look at this for me and tell me if I'm crazy? And you'd be surprised how quickly, when you make them the subject matter expert and they're like, yeah, they're the center of attention there, you'd be surprised how quickly that folks will say, okay, yeah, let me just look at it. And then eventually you just start, well, what do you think about that? And can you see that being useful in our case? And what if we tried this or that? You can start to see that they might start coming around, and then eventually it becomes their idea. So That's one of the biggest things that I like to do with people who are very entrenched, is just to showcase their and really honor their experience and their excitement around things and what they've been doing, and then also try to see if they could be a champion for what we're doing. So we're a little bit
Hey,
over. Thank you so
Mike,
much for sticking around.
Mike, hey,
Yeah,
Mike. We're
yeah.
actually not over. This is actually scheduled for an hour.
Oh, is it?
You have more
Oh,
time
I,
if you'd like to take more questions.
oh
That's up
yes,
to
let's take
you.
more questions. You know what? I apologize. You know what it is? I turned on this slideshow, and I was just looking at the timestamp on that, and it was it showed me. I turned on earlier than I turned on the thing. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's rock and
Yeah,
roll.
you're welcome.
We
Sam
got
and I have been
plenty of
trying to get
time.
your attention to tell you that, but
When I'm on a roll, I apologize. We still got 10 minutes. Look at that. I love it. This is good. Okay. So I've answered those three questions. I think there was some stuff in Melissa in the chat too. Is that true? Let me take a peek in there. Let's see the chat 13. Yeah, let me look in here and see if I can be part of that conversation.
Mike, it's
Yeah.
Sam. I was hoping that maybe you would elaborate a little bit further on, getting people who aren't
Yeah.
engaging, and especially given, I know obviously there are a lot of people who are now working with, entirely remote workforces who weren't
Yep.
formerly remote, where you had people in person, and, just any other tips on how you can, pull people into the mix and get them excited and get those video cameras on. Ironically, as I don't have my camera on, but get them, more involved. Any other advice there?
That's really a really great question, and a couple of your points there. One is that, like, the language you use to pull them in, right? Anytime you're trying to pull somebody, pull anything, think about that. Anytime somebody's tried to pull you into something, there's right. There's a connotation there that it's like, oh, that they're resisting, right? So the first attempt always has to be, or your first goal always has to be, how can I get them to want to do it rather than me having to pull them? So one of the biggest things and strategies that you can use is really to, again, get them to understand the value of it and why you're trying to do what you're doing, and have a little backstory to it. And that's what I do all of the time with every person on my team. I'm never telling them what to do. I'm always asking questions and seeing if they'll come to it themselves, right? So I'm like, so what do you think about this? If we were to change this to this, what do you think would happen, right? I'm a facilitator. I'm asking questions, and eventually they're going to walk themselves through the logic and either find something that I didn't see. They're going to see something, a blind spot for me, or they're going to come around and be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and I understand that. It has to be about trying to get adoption, not trying to pull them in because you say so, right? So doing that is a really difficult thing to do, especially as people have been entrenched in that. But when I've found success is when I've really tried to listen to what they're doing, right? Is that I ask questions and I listen. Well, what do you think would be the problem if we did that? Like one of the things I'm trying to change on my team, it's a big way that we handle the accounts, right? And I have one person that's really entrenched in that. And I'm like, well, just tell me. And I'm just asking more questions than telling why I think it's important. Like, well, tell me what you think would happen if we did this. What's the worst case scenario, right? And I'm walking through the logic of it, trying to figure out how to get them to see both sides of this. So I would say that if you become a better facilitator, especially in this day and age when we're doing a lot of this stuff via Zoom, where you're asking more questions, you're getting people to give and put in more than you're putting in, right? So like, what do you think about this? And then you backfill. I think that's a great strategy. What I mean by that is, like, I might ask a question and I might say, what do you think are the most important things when you're talking about distance education? What do you think are the most important things that you need to keep in mind when you're doing a course like this to keep your learners engaged? And instead of just telling you that on a slide and being like, it's this, it's this, it's this, you're going to come up with all sorts of awesome answers. And I'm going to be like, yeah, and this, and this. And I will backfill with stuff that I didn't think the group hit, right? Like, or I'll elaborate on things where as a touch point that I would have elaborated on it anyway. So think about that as a strategy, a really great way to come across, instead of just telling them, walking through the slide and here are 5 bullet points to keep in mind when you're doing experiential education, or you're doing Zoom type things and you want to keep them connected, right? Instead of doing that, you're like, what do you think they are? What would you do? And then they start to talk, and then you backfill, and eventually you're going to get to exactly where you would have gone anyway in a much better way. So you need to involve people in the process, get them to understand why. And as far as the camera thing is concerned, by the way, just to take a simple example, It was difficult for me too. Even the people on my team resisted until finally, I mean, I always turned mine on. And then my managers always turned theirs on. And eventually, after about the third time, everyone got it. And because what were their excuses? Oh, my hair's not done. I'm in my pajamas. I'm like, you're at work, so don't be in your pajamas. Do your hair if you need to. It's like, you need to turn your camera on. And here's why, because then we can see each other. And eventually, now it's 100%. You know, people do that in
Yeah.
like in yeah, it just happens
Yeah.
now. It becomes part, anything outside of the norm, it's going to be tough until it becomes part of the habit. And it's just
Yep.
not. And change is hard for everybody. So those are my suggestions, is make it, I mean, really ask questions and facilitate, get them to understand the reasoning behind it and the why, and try to really bring them into the conversation. Ask more questions than you give answers, unless they're really not getting it. And it's like, then you can definitely put in, but ask for them to put in. And so that instead of them just being sponges to absorb everything that you speak about.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
looks like we have another question, Mike, in the chat from Kyle. I'll just read it out loud just in case.
Please.
I think everyone can see it, but our organization has a competency program for different levels for our employees. Most buy-in due to it's tied into promotions. How do we get the individuals who fight the program? So kind of similar type question a little bit.
Yeah. It's a really good question. Okay, here's how I would approach it. I would start with their managers, is what I would do. I would start with their managers and be like, so how do you understand the situation? Like, how do you present this type of compliance stuff to them? Like, what do you say to them? Do you get them excited about it? Or, you know, you do it in a way of just gathering information, not accusatory, but just try to understand how it's being presented to them. And then I would ask those same managers, be like, hey, would you ask them? Would you connect with them and see what's missing for them? Like, why they don't want to, like what is it that is the roadblock from them from really stepping into and taking this on? Now, if you're a smaller company, you could do it yourself. Like with Build.com that I talked about, I could go to everyone individually and I would sit them down and we would have like a come to the mountain type talk. You know, I'd just be like, hey, just checking in with you. I just want to understand what's going on for you. Now, if you're a big company or you don't have that option, right, and you want to do it through different channels, that's why I'd say I'd go through the manager route and just get them to maybe have a conversation or ask them, say, encourage them. Like, would you see what's going on for them? Because their input might be critical to something that we're missing on our side. And because you think about the promotion stuff and salespeople, you've heard the term maybe that they're coin operated. I heard that a while back. I thought that was kind of funny, right? It's like put a coin in and you'll move, and promotions and money, and that's the biggest driver. But maybe something else isn't being hit, right? Maybe it isn't about the promotions or the money for them. Maybe it's about recognition. Maybe it's about something else that might be missing. So to me, it's about having that conversation, because I don't know any other way you'd really do that. You can't bring people together in a group like this and go, okay, everybody talk about your feelings and why you're not contributing and stepping up in this program. You won't get it. Crickets. That's what you're going to hear, is crickets the whole time,
Yeah.
right? But if you can have a personal conversation with somebody they trust or somebody that in their chain of command, and just say, hey, just checking in, just want to understand what's going on for you. To me, that's the approach that I would take personally, and to really understand what that is and what their motivation is and what's holding them back. Because there is something, and we just don't know what it is. Because maybe they're just not again, maybe they're not motivated by money. And I got to tell you, I'm not. Like, I like it and I think it's great and it feeds my family, but you know what? I'm more motivated by like kudos and praise and feeling like I did something good. You know what I mean? Like I made a difference. That's how you motivate me personally. And maybe that's not happening for them. You know, like they're just like, I do this, but it doesn't matter. It's like, how can you make it matter to them? Right? So people are motivated in different ways. Having that conversation is what I would do.
And I'm hoping that we can squeeze in one last question, Mike. I know we're like at the top of the hour, but we do have one really good question. Last question from Jyoti. I'll just read it aloud again. There's a problem in discussing skills gaps with the concerned stakeholders. It's the trust factor, not with the trainer personally, but with the organizational leadership. Please advise.
Yeah, trust. When you start talking about trust gaps and trust issues, that is such a big one, because if you're in the penalty box, so to speak, where it's like everything is looked at with question instead of looked at as, yeah, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, that is a tough place to be. And oh man, that's it's bigger than the time we have. But what I would say really quickly with this is just be as open and honest as you possibly can about what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to solve for, right? Always come back to the results and being like, look, you can trust me or not, or the leadership or not, but if you can get everyone to agree that, hey, by doing this, we're going to move this needle, which will affect the revenues or whatever in some way, right? Then if you can get people logically to make that step, then that can be the foundation or the beginning of it, right? Instead of trying to talk somebody in it to give you a chance and be like, oh yeah, or to just more of that, all right, I'll give this a chance. It could be more of like, if you just make the case really succinctly, like, look, we can reduce churn by 2% if we start to put some of this stuff in action. And here's my plan for that. And here's what we need to be doing, right? Or here are the courses and why we're doing what we're doing. To me, conflict exists in the absence of a good conversation. I've heard that many times in my life, and I got to tell you that I think it's true. Like, low trust exists when you're not having the conversations you need to have. That's why I think it's even a step further than that, where you have conversations about that. And you're just like, here's what I've noticed, right? I've noticed that it feels like that there's a lack of trust in this. And here's what we're trying to accomplish. And we can't do that unless we solve this thing first, right? And I know nobody wants to do that. But again, it's not in an accusatory way. It's just like, look, this is what I see. This is what people see. Is that we're just not seeing eye to eye on this. And I'm trying to understand it so that we can put out a better product for our customers, right? That we can put something out there that makes more sense for them. So, I mean, to me, that's what trust things are going to be a much bigger conversation. I apologize that if that was kind of rambling, but yeah, because there's a lot going on with that. And again, I'm really sorry again to the people who are still around for rushing there at the end, thinking that I was out of time. Total miscalculation on my part. I apologize. I hope it didn't influence and degrade your experience today. I'm really sorry for that. Thanks for sticking around, by the way.
So Mike, we are at the end. Did you have a contact slide you wanted to bring up, or?
Yeah, there's no contact slide.
Okay.
It's just here. I'll tell you, mike.martin@sap.com. Real simple. Just my name. You'll get the slides. You'll have it on there, I think. But it's just mike.martin@sap.com. Feel free, hit me up if you want to talk a little bit more specifically. Make sure and check out our product if you don't have it already, for sure. Off-the-shelf content, all that stuff too. Shameless plug at the end. We have a lot of very engaged and enthusiastic people like myself that want to help you out. And it's about the relationship for me. So that's why I'm here. And I hope that you feel that. I hope you had a great time today and learned some things. But the hard part happens now is where you got to go back and do something, right? You got to go back and think, okay, can I look through and what am I missing? How do I speak to my leadership, right? That's where you got to take that next step. Hopefully you've been inspired to do so. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.